Good morning, Wabash. Good morning, Gary. Speaking today at Pioneer Chapel will be Dr. Richard Werner with his talk titled, The Best 27 Years. You could best describe Chef Rick Werner by comparing him to a dish deeply aligned with the history and cuisine that he teaches. He is like a Mexican mole. His presence at Wabash has added a rich, complex, robust flavor that's long simmering. Dr. Werner began at Wabash as a visiting assistant professor in 1999. Beginning in 2013, he chaired the history department and received the McLean McTurnan Arnold Excellence in Teaching Award a year later. Living across the street from campus, his expanded kitchen is not just a culinary workspace, but sometimes substitutes as a second classroom. Dr. Werner's teaching centers on Latin American, African, and world history with a focus on the indigenous history of Mexico, Latin America religious history, and the global history of food. He's been a longtime chair of the Off-Campus Study Committee, and he's led 10 immersion trips to diverse places like Chiapas, Kenya, Mexico City, Panama, and Vietnam. Dr. Werner also volunteers for several nonprofits in the Crawfordsville community, most notably for 11 years with the wildly successful Dining with the Chefs that has supported the Montgomery County Free Clinic. After receiving tenure in 2008, Dr. Werner spent his sabbatical serving as Associate Dean of Students. You'll often see him on the track at football games doing push-ups, sometimes shirtless, or cheering with the Chadwick Crazies as an honorary member of the Sphinx Club. He's been their faculty advisor, and he's also served as a faculty advisor for the Independent Men's Association, Shout, La Alianza Unidos por Sangre, and Phi Delta Theta. He might just have the record for chapel talks at 8, now 9, though he's lost count. In 2019, the National Association of Wabash Men Board elevated him as an honorary alumnus, joining the class of 2013. In February, the Wabash Club of Indianapolis recognized him as their Man of the Year. Let's give a warm welcome to Dr. Werner.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. A preacher once told me that no souls are saved after the first 20 minutes, so I'll try to stick to that. I'll be honest, the original title of this talk was Old Soldiers Never Die, thanks to Douglas MacArthur for his speech to Congress some years ago for that title, but that title seemed a bit depressing, so I pivoted to the positive side today. These have indeed been an amazing 27 years. The best 27 years of my life. I'm an historian, so I'll approach things through that viewpoint to start. In 1998, I was teaching at the University of Utah in a visiting assistant professor position that was due to last 2 years. That was somewhat fun, especially as I learned about the Church of Latter-day Saints and the Jell-O salad recipes from the Mormon moms of my students. And early on, one did come to my office to give me their book. Other than that, it was a fairly dry university job. I only made a couple of friends, and I did not get to know the students that well. So I showed up, as I always did, at the American Historical Association convention in January of 1999, where initial interviews for professional positions were held. Now they're done on Zoom, go figure. I hope to find another, more interesting place to teach. At the interview with Stephen Murillo and Peter Frederick, some of you remember, I was asked a somewhat unusual question by Peter Frederick, who's always surprising. How many other interviews do you have? That's not, you don't ask that. I admitted that there were 5 other interviews, to which he sadly said, "Oh, you'll never work at Wabash." I said, "Well, here I am 27 years later, dude." I began as a visiting professor position, and a couple of years later, I was fortunate to obtain the tenure track position, and I've done a few things since then. When professors arrive at Wabash for the first time, they are faced with a culture that is, well, unique, shall we say. I remember thinking, what kind of cult is this? But I try to be open-minded as a cultural historian, and so I set my sights on understanding this unique place as best as could be achieved by a clueless outsider. The more I learned about the history and culture of the place, the more I felt drawn in. Among other obsessions, I developed an avid interest in studying Wabash history, and to this day, I love telling the story of Thomas Riley Marshall, a Lambda Chi student who got in trouble by blocking the railroad tracks in opposition to required military education in the 1890s. But for what it's worth, he survived a trip to the dean's office, and he went on to become vice president of the United States under Woodrow Wilson, so he did all right. You go lamb chops. My interest in Wabash history and some talks that I've offered on the subject did not go unnoticed, and one evening almost 20 years ago, the Sphinx Club invited me into this chapel to quiz the current Rhines. By the way, congratulations, Rhines, ex-Rhines. So I was asked by Mark Dietzen, was his name at the time, to come in and quiz them on Wabash history, and I arrived at the door when I discovered that this invitation was nothing but an excuse to get me into a candlelit chapel, for which the express purpose was putting a pot on my head. Many years later, despite a certain yellowing around the edges, which I get critiqued about, this is my second one, the other one's really yellow. I still enjoy wearing it. And over the past 27 years, I've been privileged to deliver, I think, more than like a dozen talks from this podium. It's hard to keep track, because a lot of times it's like, because I've been advisor to Sphinx Club, it's like somebody backs out 48 hours in advance, like, don't worry, can you go, so I've, 4 or 5 of them I've given that reason, but sometimes they're devoted to Wabash history, but my most memorable one came in 2006. It was titled, Wabash in War and Peace. Most of this was devoted to many stories of Wabash men who used their critical thinking skills in military conflicts dating back to the 1840s. But since part of my identity, as you may know, as being a wager of peace, I'm a freaking Quaker, I also devoted some time to describe the efforts made by Wabash men to wage peace in our country. It was in this connection that I spoke about Bill Plaker, whose 1970 commencement address should be familiar to many of you, if not all of you. He had a very kind manner about him, as can be heard in perhaps the most pungent of lines in that speech. Something there is about a war that seems to be killing your friends to no good purpose. His wisdom was not lost on the Midwestern crowd out here on the ground, in the lawn, who about a week before were shocked by the 4 killings of students in Kent State University in Ohio. So it was quite a poignant moment. But the reason that I recall this particular moment in that chapel talk most visibly is that something miraculous happened at that very moment that I was uttering those very words. It was a bright sunny day. It was a beautiful day like this. The door was open, as the door is open right now. And I stood here speaking to a couple hundred of you, as I am right now. And at that very moment, when I uttered those lines, who should arrive at the chapel but Professor Plaker himself? I'm looking out at him. He stood back there with a huge S-eating grin on his face. It's chapel, I can't swear. And as 200 people listened to my recitation of his very own words, without anybody having the slightest idea that the original author had just arrived at the back of the room. And I didn't break a moment. I didn't even tell him. I'm just looking at him as I've seen him. It was something for me between an incredible coincidence or a spiritual moment. And I've come to believe it more of the latter. If he showed it up right now, I would definitely think of it as a spiritual moment. So I actually feel like he's here, to tell you the honest truth. I've come to believe that latter. So I did not let on that he arrived. I just continued with the address, and Bill and I joked about that for many months afterwards. I have to say more about the culture of Wabash. I soon learned that Wabash always fights describes a work ethic that we aspire to on the playing field and in the classrooms. I am fond of saying, as many of you know, that this is an O-line school. Don't misunderstand me. All positions and all sports are important, but I see a selfless work ethic exemplified on the football offensive line that others also follow. Old Line School Lomi, there you go. As I often say to campus visitors in my capacity as the great interrupter of campus tours, I knew somebody would get that. Students do not look at their hair in the mirror before they come to class. They come in and they work hard, and if they don't, well, you know what we do. In sum, the work ethic here is the strongest of any college I know. We hold each other accountable on that score. We work together on this. As we say in my recovery group, we're all just noodles in the same soup, right? It's egalitarian. There's a strong working class ethics on this campus that I find very inspiring and I constantly brag about to other people. As most of you know, I found my chops in the restaurant business. And like Anthony Bourdain, I have the highest respect for workers in the dish pit. In my own case, those hardworking dudes in my California kitchen, most of whom had immigrated from Mexico, inspired me to no end. I made sure that they had plenty of beer at cleanup time. Yeah, gotta take care of them. They taught me about their nation, so much so, and this is the truth, that when I left the restaurant business to go to graduate school, I pursued a PhD in Mexican history. To this day, I didn't know anything about Mexican history until I met these guys, honestly. To this day, I honor the working people in my midst. I do bring muffins to campus services from time to time in gratitude for their labor, so take care of working people. As a historian and a guy who has been plugged in here for nearly 3 decades, I'm often asked if Wabash has changed over the years. Well, as with most historical questions, the answer is yes and no. In terms of continuity, we continue to preach the gentleman's rule, which I take to heart. My colleague Dean Raiders in the dean's office when I was there often said that the second half, a responsible citizen, is by far the most important point. It is about ethics. I would like to believe that Socrates and his pupil Plato would appreciate the responsible citizen part of the gentleman's rule. As with the concept of justice itself, I will submit that this is actually a verb. We are constant works in progress. In that way, the rule is part of the past and part of the present and part of the future. It should be jealously guarded. If we can work to maintain a culture of responsibility, we can avoid the cacophony of rules that plague most institutions. I invite you to reflect on the power of the rule and on your responsibility to it. The rule's not perfect, and we need to continue to work on it. When inappropriate behavior occurs, like demeaning messages, homophobic or racist comments or behavior occurs, we must respond to demand ethical behavior. To touch on a current sore subject, if students can refrain from parking in prime spots that need to be used by hardworking campus workers, then perhaps we can avoid the advent of official parking policies that plague other institutions. Let's work on that. My prayer is that your good behavior will convince the college, sorry for this statement, convince the college to remove those unfortunate signs that threaten to tow your car. Sorry. I hope that proper behavior will win out. On a positive note, I will submit that the rule is generally alive and well. Things have, of course, changed over time. We are no longer shaved W's and heads at chapel sing, not that I know of anyway. But we still have a vigorous chapel sing competition, right? Which I do endeavor to explain to new faculty on the steps of Baxter Hall every fall, because it is unusual. In many ways, I'm quite excited about the shifts in our culture that maintain our ethical and caring spirit. My final remarks reflect my appreciation for these critical cultural changes within our longstanding culture. The best metaphor for these current changes is reflected in a sign that you will find on the front door of the football team office upstairs in the Armory building. 2 statements appear side by side. Outwork, outlove. Outwork, outlove. For me, this is the perfect description of Wabash always fights in our day. As is often noted, we live in a time in which young men struggle from time to time, psychologically. I know that I do. Believe me, thinking about retirement's got my head totally messed up. This has arguably increased over recent years, but really has it? I don't know. I would argue that what has increased is our ability as men to admit when we need help. That's huge. We can admit our vulnerability. Heck, I didn't even know that word until a few years ago. I stood here in this space 6 years ago, and I made a stark admission to several hundred of you. This is the sort of vulnerable truth that can be difficult to talk about, and I do not expect anyone else to be as open as I was and am about it. But I definitely says something about our community that I was able to utter these words from this pulpit. I am an alcoholic. Since that day, I've not returned to that addiction. But more to the point, this has opened up space for discussions about all sorts of substance concerns that students and others may have. I doubt that I could have uttered those words so publicly in most other colleges or universities, maybe anywhere else, I don't know. I truly appreciate all of the love and support I've received from my community here over the years as I continue my own work in progress on this and work with others as they come to me. The truth is that we've always been here together in this way. It's just that we speak more clearly about it now. My colleague John Fisher was well known for grabbing concerned students by the arm while using his rotary phone, if you know what those used to be, to make an appointment with a psychologist. But, today that's a more comfortable conversation, as most of you already know how to ask for help, right? This is what we do, right? We should. There are many informal spaces on campus where these conversations can occur. My favorite is Petty's Patch in the Arboretum. To be honest, I once had a deep conversation with a student who had witnessed firsthand the passing of Johnny Smith in Adult House in 2008. I was in the dean's office at the time. And to tell you the honest truth, I was the first administrator that was brought to the house to see his body. So that was a very heavy time, and it was for this guy. He had actually been with him when he died. That was a particularly heavy moment for him and for many of us, which we worked together through conversation and therapy, right? We do it together, right? We open up to each other. So these 27 years have been amazing and a great combination of fun, hard work, and sensitivity with Wabash Brothers. Wabash Always Fights means so much more to me now and is filled with so much promise. We are continuing our great history as we approach the 200th anniversary. We will continue to do the work. In conclusion, I will answer a question I get frequently, not now. What will you be doing in retirement? Well, to the extent I know, I can share a few things. I'll continue my research about food history, hopefully in a campus office, not in Baxter. Oh, that's actually working on that. Or as I have famously said to the President Feller, I ain't going to any more faculty meetings. But I'll be in that office, and I'll be happy to meet with students about whatever's on your mind, good, bad, or indifferent. I'll continue my work on the Wellness Committee, the kinds of things I've noted here already, and I'll continue to show up at sporting events, cheering our teams with push-ups alongside my Sphinx Club brothers. I'll try to remember to keep my shirt on. Maybe. I'll close with a line that a good friend of mine uses in recovery meetings. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Wabash Always Fights.
A few final announcements. At this time, I would like to invite Hugh Vandeveer up for a quick word on Day of Giving.
I got to follow that? Good Lord. I too have a clipboard. Following our esteemed professor of history, I offer a bit of Wabash lore. In the fall of 1886, just 2 years after Wabash played the college's first ever football game against Butler University, which we won 4-0. The students called a meeting to adopt a college yell and college colors. According to these fleeting years, quote, a student had proposed that heliotrope would be a nice color for the college. Now, does anybody know what heliotrope looks like? In an alternate universe, this is Wabash with heliotrope. Yikes. Sentiment appeared to favor this suggestion until a speaker arose with 5 words that made history. Heliotrope hell, we want blood. So scarlet it was. For Wabash, scarlet has long represented the passion, fire, energy, loyalty, and pride that we have in our college. So to commemorate 140 years of the color we love so well, Wednesday, April 29th, will be a Scarlet Banner Day for Wabash's 2026 Day of Giving. We invite you to please join us that day for an all-campus lunch at Chadwick. We'll have giveaways and activities to help liven up the Wednesday of Dead Week. There and on Tuesday, you'll be able to pick up a free t-shirt. This year you can choose from 2. White or gray? Winner of the poll. And also, the squirrel hunt returns. I know how to please the crowd, don't I? So take out your phones and follow National Association of Wabash Men on Instagram. There we'll post the clues on locations around campus or programs recently improved by our thoughtful and generous alumni and donors. Our thanks to the Wabash Club of Evansville for sponsoring the squirrels this year. So when you find one on campus, take the squirrel over to the library where we will be stationed. Each squirrel is worth $100 that you can use to make gifts to any challenge that you would like. And yes, you get to keep the squirrel. And no, please do not capture and bring in live squirrels. Now, new this year, we're also putting together a battle for the banner. The living unit with the highest percentage of alumni and students who make a gift on the day of giving will win a custom banner that they can display at homecoming and throughout the year. So we will be revving everybody up for that. So I just encourage everybody, let's raise the banner on 429.
On Friday, track and field will begin their weekend meet at Indiana Wesleyan. On Saturday, baseball will play at Kenyon. Also on Saturday, lacrosse will be having their senior day home game against Worcester. And lastly, baseball will have another home game on Sunday against Capital. Now, would you please rise and join me in singing Old Wabash? Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da.